two short announcements. In the last press briefing, I mentioned that I would make known the persons who has been assigned to take charge of the day-to-day running of the prison in the phase of restructuring. And they are Inspector of Police, Mr. Stephen Carty, and former prison official, now instructor at the Justice Academy, Mr. Wilfred Williams. These two gentlemen both have experience in the prison. They are of good, sound integrity. They're very dedicated, and I think together with the support that they're entitled to, we can bridge this initial phase where we are trying to normalize the situation back at the prison to move forward on the recommendations that the different reports mention. Also, in that same note, I will be now following up with the installing of the task force that would comprise of the different departments and agencies that have to do with the prison in the day-to-day functioning. Also, the tripartite meeting which between the minister, public prosecutor, and police, which normally takes place every 6 weeks, would be held this afternoon. And one of the agenda points is the prison, so we would further elaborate on the plans moving forward. So we have a good start. I hope we can continue to get the support and the understanding of the public that we are busy and that we are taking this issue seriously and working on it. The next announcement has to do with the police. You may have noticed, it would be hard not to notice, the increased activity of the police on all fronts. And that increased activity have been booking tremendous success. I cannot go into further details, so I would just with this refer to the announcements that both the police press officer or the prosecution press officer will be making and have made up to now. In a previous press briefing, I also mentioned that I met with the Association of St. Martin Insurance Association, Chamber of Commerce, and merchants to discuss the situation with the robberies, and with the police also. In that session, I've asked them to work together and together come up with solutions. Not everyone doing their own thing, but let's work on solutions. First of all, the bike patrol has been expanded and some of the members of the bike patrol are following their follow-up training at the academy. And in the discussions, a task force has been formed between these groups, and some results have been booked already in the sense that the Chamber of Commerce have agreed to finance all of the servicing and repairs of the bikes of the bike patrol. So we don't have to worry about that. There would not be no delay of signing bonds or what have you not. The Chamber of Commerce would make sure that those bikes are in good condition. The St. Martin Association of Insurances would take care of the bikers' new uniforms. So all of the uniforms for the bikers, adequate uniforms, the Insurance Association would take care of that. When we close off Phillipsburg because of a lot of ships in town, etc., the barricades are there. Sometimes people just come and they move them and they drive through. Going forward, those barricades will be manned. So anyone not having any reasons to be in Front Street They cannot just come out and move the barricades. They would have to state why they need to be on Front Street, and that way you have a better control during those periods, who is on Front Street and what they are doing there, as far as vehicle traffic and things like that are concerned. I announced also that the Camera Project Phase 1 was about to start, and in those discussions, and it hasn't been quite finalized yet, but the Chamber of Commerce also, they're considering of financing Phase 2 of the Camera project. The police department, besides expanding the bike patrol, will also be providing awareness training to the different businesses, because as was said, businesses, it's not just a matter of open your door and sell your products, but the risk that go along with certain type of businesses, you should be able to be aware of what those risks are and how best to act in such situations. For now, I believe that I have covered the points in the introduction that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Raphael Bousman, for your opening remarks. At this time, I'd like to invite to the podium Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports Affairs, the Honorable Sylveria Jacobs. Minister.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Good morning to all. Good morning to my colleagues, as well as to those following this broadcast and the media present. This morning, I'd like to update you on some highlights of the ministry, the Division Education Innovations in the I Am King stakeholders meetings that are planned for this Thursday and Friday, February 23rd and 24th, in collaboration with the Department of Youth Affairs. They're quite excited to be hosting this very first I Am King stakeholders session. This will be held at the NEPA. The stakeholder session aims to facilitate dialogue between key stakeholders in the community as it relates to male empowerment and to devise a way forward on how we as a community can empower our men right here on St. Martin. The outcome of this session will be a plan devised collectively by the stakeholders on the male empowerment to 17 and beyond. This will be a two-day session catering to approximately 50 representatives from various schools and organizations on the island and are engaged in male empowerment or in contact with young males on a regular basis. The stakeholder session is the conclusion, so part 3 of a trilogy of events for I Am King. As was reported previously, the first event was kicked off where 180 men from secondary schools, NEPA and USM, were in attendance and discussed prevalent issues that are affecting our youth. The second one, which was the public session, man-to-man, straight talk, no holds barred conversation, was held at the end of January. And this one left many people within our society, especially those in attendance, wanting more about these discussions. So this last part of the trilogy, which will be on Thursday and Friday, we expect and we look forward to a full attendance so that your voices can be heard in planning the steps forward in terms of empowering our males. Also from Innovations Division, the iStep program continues to be underway. The logo competition has been completed and the winners will be announced via the Facebook page. The training which was held last week, hosted by EdTech Teacher for management and teachers at NEPA February 13th and 14th, are deemed a success, not just from the trainer's point of view, but specifically from those who took part in these trainings. It was divided into 2 parts, a 3-day management training and 2-day teacher training. Mr. Tom Deaccord, the director and co-founder of EdTech Teacher, flew to the island to give the 5-day workshop. Currently, iStep is taking all necessary steps to bring our classrooms, the St. Martin classrooms, into the 21st century. One school, one teacher, one student at a time. And so we congratulate them on these first steps taken. We have a very long way to go, of course, but the enthusiasm that the management as well as the teachers exhibited during these trainings and thereafter gives us a good feeling that the monies that we are putting into not just buying devices, but in terms of training and getting them passionate about utilizing technology in the classrooms, I think will take us a long way. Many of the other teachers, I'm sure, now are clamoring to know when their turn will come, so we look forward to that. In respect to the rights of the child, over the past 4 years, in collaboration with the Youth Department of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, the St. Martin Promoting Young Ambassadors Foundation has been organizing a presentation on the Articles of the Rights of the Child. Usually this starts in November, but we're happy to say that it wasn't just a one-month celebration of the rights. It continues through to today. And this year, the focus will be on a movie that depicts the theme, seeing that it is Educate Me Right, So My Future is Bright. The movie, Queen of Katwe, has been selected as the movie of this year's theme, and it will promote, it also falls right in line with the ministry's objective on education on the move. So it will be a collaboration between the two. It will be open to the general public and at the Bel Air Community Center on also February 24th from 4 to 7 p.m. In news from the Student Support Services Division, the Student Support Services Division within the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports aspires to educate both parents and students alike about academic opportunities available in Canada. Therefore, they are conducting a workshop entitled College or University 101, the Canadian System. This will be held on February 28th at the Student Support Services offices from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. This is above the Gatsby store across from the police station. Any persons interested in attending are urged to contact SSSD's office at 543-1235 to reserve a spot. It's interactive and free, open to students and or parents in their last 2 years of secondary school or recent graduates who are interested in studying in Canada. Also from Student Support Services, as a division within the government, it also offers, so schools and school boards can also contact them for workshops needed or trainings needed. And they were contacted by the Sister Borgia School, and they presented a workshop on an interactive and informative session, on the dangers of the internet and the effect on technology on students. So while we are gung-ho on making sure that we utilize all the technology available, of course, parents, students, and teachers alike must be aware of the dangers associated with such. And the SSSD counselors did this for the 7th and 8th group, 7 and 8, so 5th and 6th grade students and their parents, and teaching them ways to be empowered, using the media for their benefit, and to bring awareness to the potential dangers. So those sessions were held last Wednesday, the 15th of February, and we are very grateful to SSSD for meeting that need also within our society. There are several other issues still pending, of course, within the ministry that are being worked out. Several I'm seeing highlighted within the press. I do not deem it necessary at this point to go into details on things that are being investigated that are still not finalized. We are currently still working on the committee that has to give me the advice in terms of how we would move forward with the structure of public education. And so these are all things that are being worked out within the departments. I do understand that some may be impatient as to the result, but until the reports have been finalized, the SOAB report has been presented to me, I cannot take any other steps. In the meantime, we continue to encourage the teachers, management, etc., to remain open in communication and to continue to let us know where bottlenecks appear. We are also, of course, with construction of the schools, seeing some backlog, the one at St. Martin Vocational School that has not been finalized as yet. So I can continue to say that during press briefings, but until it changes, then, you know, you will be updated. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Jacobs, for your opening remarks. If you have just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing. We now go over to the question and answer session. Members of the press, member of the press is reminded to limit your questions to short, direct queries. The floor is now open for questions. Bibi Haj Shah, SMN News, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcia. Good morning, ministers. Minister Boseman, I was supposed to ask you this last week, but of course, time span ran out on us. Last Wednesday marked 1 year since Catherine Kushi has escaped from the prison, and then on that very day, we got a release stating that, yeah, we're going to start looking for him. Over a period of that year, I've seen a lot of activities on the front side trying to find Kuchi, but then it stopped. Can you give us an update as to what type of actions are going to be taken to capture what is described a dangerous prisoner?
Okay, thank you, Bibi. The answer to that is no, I cannot, because then I might as well tell Kuchi what we are doing. What I can assure the public is that the police, Dutch and French, have never stopped looking for him. The efforts are continuing, and the efforts will continue to intensify. That is what I can say.
You also mentioned in your statement just not long ago that the police will be providing training to merchants or businesses, if I'm correct in your words. But also you said the police is understaffed. So where are they going to get extra manpower to train people from the private sector as to how they should secure their business?
Okay. Last week I announced that we agreed to expand the police force with,
Yes.
with 20 new people. Naturally, we don't have them in yet. But you have to look at the training is an awareness something. It is not a training where somebody's going to be standing hours in front of a classroom week upon week. It is more going over tips, how as a business person you can make sure that the risk of being robbed, and in the event that you are being robbed, how can you do to keep yourself and your staff safe? That is how you should look at it, and for that there is always enough police available, because once the public and all involved have that awareness, it would be less for the police, the need to be actually involved in things if you can prevent it. So you have to look at it that way. There will be police officers available to do that. Don't forget, we also have the academy with people teaching at the academy. I don't know the details of how the police are going to organize it, but they will be given those awareness training.
My third question, Minister Boseman, the Ministry of Justice is really a very heavy ministry. Ever since you took office, you are also manning or being in charge of another very heavy ministry that has very much importance to this country, the Ministry of TIAC. I noticed last week their appointments being made. Give me a little insight as how do you manage both heavy ministries where key decisions have to be taken?
Okay, that's a very good question, and it is a fact. It is very very demanding, hardly get rest. It is a challenge, but I look at it that it is a temporary challenge that we have to do. That is one. Secondly, I'm not doing it alone. Each ministry has a cabinet, and each ministry has its departments. Okay, so it is not like the minister alone is involved with that. Thirdly, there's a council of ministers. The example, for instance, is when with the conference, I think it was in Bahamas or something like that, because of the schedule and the heaviness of the thing, I asked my colleague, Minister Lee, to attend on my behalf. So we are doing this together. It is, yes, Minister Boseman is responsible, but TIAT is being managed. Hopefully, Minister Boseman would hope that it would not take too long more like this, because you're right, it is very demanding. But it is not so that TIAT is being neglected.
I didn't say it was being neglected.
I'm just-
Appointments are being made. Can I continue, Marsha? Of course. All right. Minister Emmanuel, GEBE. Have you found the person that is going to replace the vacant seat on the supervisory board? And especially now that the chairman of the supervisory board just a week ago was ill, so there you have two missing people on the board, because one is ill and a seat is empty. Have you found a solution for that?
Well, I have someone in mind, but I think this is a discussion that needs to be taken up in a Council of Ministers with everyone present. And as it is right now, you can see is only 3 of us here, even though Minister Lee is on the island. But I would call it sort of the, not to use the term, the older heads, but I would say the well-experienced individuals in terms of the ministers off island. And I think coming next Council of Ministers meeting, probably next week, we would have that discussion in terms of how we plan to go about if we decide that, given the conditions that the chairman, the now sitting chairman, saying that he was ill a couple of weeks ago, if probably, he should be replaced or given his conditions or a full health evaluation. And I know you're talking about the now Member of Parliament, Mr. Pantaflet. Seat is vacant. Again, like I said, I have some names, but I have one in particular. But again, it's not a decision that one wants to rush into because you're a minister. You can just make such a decision. I think is a discussion that we need to take up in the Council of Ministers and see which direction we are going to go in terms of the individuals for both posts, or what decision we will take concerning the chairman of the supervisory board.
Still on the topic of GEB, have they submitted their budget, balanced budget as yet? That's one part of it. And secondly, do you know if GEBE is complying with the law by having drinking water or GEB water tested by an external body? Did you discuss this with the Minister of Health? Because drinking water, falls under him, but I've never heard him talk about it. All I hear about is the new hospital, but water, I don't know if it's being tested. I know there is an issue going on with SLS and GEBE regarding the testing of water and payment. Can you give us any insight?
Well, what I can tell you concerning the first part of your question, yes, the budget has been brought to the Council of Ministers and it is in discussion. We had a few appointments with them, discussing the pros and cons and the direction that they want to go forward, meaning GEBE. And I think it's a matter of synergizing our position where government and the company is lined up together and say, this is the approach we see GEBE taking collectively in this first year, next year again to come. So that discussion is ongoing right now between the Council of Ministers and also my person and the Minister of Finance with the management team of GEBE. I hope that suffices for your first question. And the second part comes when you're talking about the drinking water. And yes, you're absolutely correct. It is, as much as it's GEBE, it's more heavily aside on the portfolio of the Minister of Health. But you also mentioned a part of the law. You will have to quote the law for me if you tell me if they're complying with the law. Which law are you talking about?
When it comes to the testing of drinking with water from GEBE, GEBE is testing their own water. You cannot, it's like putting the rat to mind the cheese. You have
No, but that's our opinion. That's not the law. That's vague as best.
If you have water, you must have your water tested by an external body. Normally, GEBE was testing their water with SLS, but for some reason they stopped. So I'm asking you now, if you know, because drinking water can have any kind of things inside, especially if it's stagnant.
So you're asking me if I know what exactly?
If the water is testing, because they have
No,
stopped.
I don't know, and that's a conversation I will take up with the Minister of Health.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe do you have any further questions for any of the ministers?
Just Minister Jacob. Minister Jacob, you mentioned briefly about certain things that are in the press, and I think I understand where you're going. But have you been in contact, and just for clarity's sake, with the teachers addressing their concerns, especially those that they made regarding the department head of education? Have you been in contact with them? Because you said that there is some ongoing investigation, you're waiting on a report, but being silent, teachers not hearing from you, they feel neglected. Can you give us an update if you have met with them recently and where we are other than waiting on this report you spoke about?
Thank you for that elucidation that you're asking for, I guess, on my statements. To further clarify, I haven't met with him since sitting in December. I have met with a smaller group, the group that was dealing with the challenges at the Leonard Connor School. Before that, I met with bigger groups. I've met with the management. No, we have not met with them on one-on-one. I have communicated with them via email just before the end of the year. However, I haven't had a face-to-face meeting with them in this first quarter as yet. It is to come back and have nothing new to report based on it is the only reason why I have not met with them. I would like to meet with them to be able to further update them on steps that are being taken. The management as well, we are looking as well to foster closer ties with the management. But it is a department still within the ministry. And as such, even though as minister I am finally responsible, I'm the one finally responsible, just like with other departments, I have to allow due diligence to take place, and I do not want in any way for any department head to feel that this minister is on a witch hunt. The idea of being a minister is that you are fostering your passion. Yes, my passion remains education. I remain stalwart in fighting for the youth on St. Martin, fighting for the education, fighting for teachers. And that's why we've also established the Education on the Move thing, trying to get teachers to focus on some of the positive happenings and moving forward. SSSD is giving the workshops. So I'm constantly coming here and talking about different things within the ministry that are happening that are directly and indirectly affecting teachers on St. Martin. The Education Department is working on several legislations. They are in process. The quality of education has been the Toezicht, the supervision of education. The Inspectorate Department has also come up with their documentation, which has to be better communicated, because another issue they had was inspectors just walk in and they never know what is the result of the inspection. So everything that has been brought forward by the teachers, by management, has been discussed within the ministry, forms part of their year plan, and it will just seem maybe to those who are in the heat or those observing that it's not happening. But there is a lot happening within the ministry to actually prepare for the changes that we will be requiring. So I'm just asking the teachers at this point to be patient with me, to be patient with the ministry, because it does take some time for the execution. I myself am a bit impatient, but I have to understand it's human beings also carrying out the work. So I'm awaiting that report in terms of how we are restructuring public education. It is not the department, it's a division. All other school boards have a supervisory board, and they have, whether it's directors or whatever the case may be. Public education is structured as a department or a division within government, which has challenges. Some of the claims are that some of the challenges are because they are within government. So I need to be able to ascertain what are the causes and what are the best ways to resolve them. And so we are finally, hopefully within this month, getting the final report. The SG is working very closely with the division head on every step. And so if there are still challenges, then I would just have them send forward via the SG to myself, and we will address them as soon as possible.
My final question, Minister Jacob, and I don't know if you're going to answer it or your colleague minister from the Minister of Romy. The K-Bay situation with Lionel Collins School and all the fumes around there and all the big companies around there, one of the things that they do not have is a hindrance permit. You have
they? They?
You have the
Doesn't have a hindrance permit.
some of the companies there, I understood, do not have a hindrance permit. I did check with Romi, and they clarified that some of those companies, for example, Sol, you have all of them down there. Are you guys working on this to see and to make sure that there is no more toxic fumes? Because people, beside the school, you have people living there. So are we ensuring that the companies that are operating in K-Bay area have the necessary permits and would take the necessary measures to ensure that there is no toxic fume in the area?
Okay, where it pertains to the permits, etc., I'll allow my colleague minister to answer. However, what I can reassure the general public of is that about 2 weeks or so ago, in Council of Ministers, I actually sent a letter to my colleague ministers of VSA and VROMI to also push within their ministries that the departments do what they have to do in terms of we are finalizing the school to be able to have our schools relocated, our students and teachers relocated. They will be safer inside the classrooms, yes, but of course they continue to ask me, what about the rest of the community and the KB community? The Ministry of VSA has already started a process to ascertain, and we'll be getting assistance from PAHO. I believe we mentioned that 2 weeks ago as well. And the Ministry of ROMI also has to take the necessary steps in terms of the environment, and that would be checking for the permits, etc. I do know that the laundry has a hindrance permit and have been checked over and over. GEBE is to do what they have to do, and I believe Sol also has theirs. So if they don't, it would be the ministry that has to carry out their due diligence in taking that to where it has to be. But definitely what we wanted to bring forth back then and now is that all three ministries are collaborating to make sure that it's not just the school that is safe, but the entire area.
Well, you know, I think the bigger question that one should ask, or you should ask, is how is it that companies are operating without the necessary permits? And like my colleague mentioned a while ago, there's only about 2 companies in the vicinity that have exhaust of smoke, which is GEBE and the laundry. And the laundry has their hindrance permit. Now, when you look at GEBE, that's a different story. They are 60 years old, I'm 40. So I came and I met GEBE operating. So the question should be, how is it that it's what it is? Hey, it's GEBE. But yes, you know, having the necessary permits is something that the ministry, we at the ministry, are seriously looking into, not specifically just for GEBE, for a number of businesses. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. Sometimes in St. Martin, we see establishments up and running for a number of years and doesn't have the necessary permits. I've come across buildings that are completely finished, and now that they can't get a GEBE meter, because you need to have your building permit and this and that, all the necessary things in place to operate or to get electricity or to get water, is then they come in and start to ask for the permit. And then it's a long investigation with how you started, how did this get done? And it's just not one isolated case, but then the question that I made mention should be asked. How is it that GEBE is operating for 60 years in the vicinity as it is without a hindrance permit? You ask me, I don't know.
Making sure that
Definitely, that's why I said definitely is something that you're working on. But it's not just to say you're working on the reason why. At the stage of the way it is right now, is to bring them up to par and up to speed with the modern times in terms of these are the necessary documentation that you need to be operating properly and to be operating legally. And again, here's what it is. It's our own. It's our own utility company. Just sort of imagine the cost of a hindrance permit for GEBE at this time. It will be very, very expensive.